So once again, I am Stuart Edgley from Emerald Group, and we've been involved with the energy efficiency scheme since, well, pretty much the DEEM schemes anyway, since their inception back in 2006 under the GGAS program. I'd like to start by probably looking over our shoulder a little bit and understanding how where the schemes are going moving forward, is kind of understanding what's worked for us in the past. And certainly by far across all the schemes, whether it be New South Wales, Victoria, the ACT or South Australia, all the schemes have really been driven by deemed activities. So the risks around deemed activities have been very strong, and that's resulted in the most of the activity. But primarily the driver behind those deemed activities have been for the consumer on the back of financial benefits, low barriers to entry and a return on investment. And we really feel that without the consumer's buy-in and reducing those barriers to entry, the consumer just won't engage. And of course then for service providers, it's profitability, market confidence, and the challenges around compliance, so risk. But the industry will always gravitate to those factors. If we look over our shoulder if we look on the ground here in New South Wales, this chart reflects certificate creation over the last couple of years. The green is this year and the darker colours are last year. But generally speaking, you can see there's three activities there that have created the overwhelming majority of certificates. And it's no surprise to us that is on the back of commerciality. The schemes are driven by commercial outcomes. In New South Wales, there's 41 approved activities, but there's three activities that have done very, very well. Hot water over the recent times has been the number one activity, particularly commercial, but there's going to be some significant changes to commercial hot water over the next period with the reduction in perks in the next financial year. Lighting is very, very consistent, and the HERE program has been very consistent as well. We've got new methods there coming through with the residential hot water, and we're looking for some consistency in that moving forward. But once again, if we really want to see transition, that transition, if we're talking about hot water, heating and cooling, will only really truly happen when we've got consumer buy-in and then providers' confidence. Just very quickly into Victoria, it's a really different looking chart actually. Lighting has been the number one activity there for the last couple of years. Weather sealing, which is a real surprise. Weather sealing activities is really the low-hanging fruit, but it's created an enormous amount of certificates. And of course, refrigeration and hot water. But those three top activities are going to see a really big change over the next period. With the telemarketing and door knocking bans in Victoria, we're anticipating seeing weather sealing pretty much disappear actually. And of course the refrigeration is not providing and supporting certificate creation. So lighting is still the driver down there. Once again, new methods like heating and cooling and hot water are still evolving. That market is still got a way to go to be fully commercialised and see true certificate creation. So as a result of that, we're seeing very high certificate prices, and that is really a reflection on not just we're talking about a market transition, but we're talking about even a certificate program transition, which is now reflected in that certificate price. So of course, for the schemes certainly have some pressures and challenges, and they'll definitely need to evolve to meet our needs. The schemes need to foster transition and remove unnecessary barriers, and those barriers may be, a barrier to entry for the consumer. If it's going to cost too much, they just won't engage. At the moment, with the cost of living, people just don't have the money to engage deeply in energy efficient products, and nor would they if under a business as usual case, where, for example, if a hot water system failed, there's no hot water for 24 hours, the default position for a consumer would be to replace what they've got, instantaneous or gas or electric storage. And of course, it's more cost effective to do that if you do it outside of the schemes. So the schemes will need to evolve to support that. I believe we need to widen the scope of the schemes and to embrace innovation and support certificate creation on the back of that. Where certificate creation can't support change and drive change, I believe that the schemes need to look at other triggers. And examples of those triggers would be in Victoria, there's the solar VIC, activity, which is a $1,000 rebate to medium to low income earners. Now that's a really good example of supporting change and transition. That $1,000 goes a long way to reducing that barrier to entry, the financial burden on the consumer. You take that away, certificate creation would almost come to a halt. That's how sensitive our market is. So looking for government to be ambitious and supporting the programs and having the ability to have triggers to reduce those barriers to entry will be absolutely critical. Other example of support would be considering incentivising fuel switching and load shedding, energy management, and we're seeing that these energy management and productivity programs, particularly in South Australia, I think this has been very successful for them. And New South Wales now introducing the PDRS. That's been really supportive. It's an exciting time ahead. You know, we have an industry here that's committed to drive change. We have the products, we have the workforce, but we'll need to have government engage deeply with industry to drive these changes. It was interesting listening to Jane earlier talking about trust in the market and barriers to entry. I think that really resonated with me. So having those government engage and giving the government support and allowing consumers to recognise that government are behind these programs will be critical for trust. So with that, we need the government to continue in its ambitious target setting. I believe we need a targeted approach. Like I said before, there's 41 activities in New South Wales and 31 in Victoria, and only about 3 or 4 of those have participated in any particular time. So if we learn from the PV industry and how PV was rolled out, we could learn from the successes of that industry and the challenges of that industry, and then apply them to a targeted approach across not just product, but segments of our community. Consider new methodologies, but most of all, and I know I'm harping on about this, it needs to be commercial. We do a lot of work in this room in and around bringing new methodologies to market and consultations, but all this hard work often doesn't really transpire into certificate creation and driving change. So we would encourage the government to consider commerciality when we're working on new methodologies. And of course, I wouldn't like to say fluffy, but the horizon is bright. You know, it's very exciting. The outcomes are strong. I'm not suggesting that we'll solve all the world's problems, but certainly, you know, energy efficiency, decarbonisation and electrification go a long way to reducing the cost of living. With dedicated programs, we can look at markets to support the vulnerable and the low income earners. And of course, jobs. I've got a lot of thoughts around jobs and how we would support this market. The Energy Efficiency Council is doing a brilliant job in regards to supporting that part of the industry. And of course, industry and innovation. You know, my experience in manufacturing and travelling the world and looking at our products, we've seen it in lighting. You know, we have best of breed in this country in lighting. And now from a hot water system and air conditioning perspective, we are really leading the way from a technology perspective, and that is all under the banner of the support of the schemes. Of course, a byproduct of everything we're doing is the environment. So just to wrap up, once again, I think we've got the industry here for it, and with that deep engagement from government, a targeted approach, but looking through all these methodologies through the lens of commerciality, I believe will go a long way to supporting change. Thank you.